The main character, named Michael, was lying in bed and, opening his eyes, saw two beautiful girls in front of him. The beauties began to lick the hero. He could not remember where they came from and where he was. Suddenly, Michael felt a disgusting, slimy tongue touch his cheek. The hero finally opened his eyes, still believing that there were two beautiful girls next to him. He asked them to stop licking him because it was very ticklish. Suddenly, the hero froze. Cold sweat started running down his face. He was scared. Instead of girls, Michael saw in front of him a hungry, two-headed hyena, wanting to feast on him. Giant tongues hung out of the mouths of this bloodthirsty monster and drooled. The hero grabbed the nearest rock to protect himself from this evil creature. One of the heads approached him, and he hit it with all his might with a heavy stone. While the monster was coming to his senses, Michael decided to escape so as not to become dinner for an unexpected guest. The two-headed hyena rushed after him. The hero had to be very fast to avoid being caught by it. Michael went out for supplies and didn't expect that his minute's rest would lead to such consequences. The hero began to get tired, but it seemed that the monster had already fallen behind and had given up all attempts to catch him. Michael noticed that it would soon get dark and moving would become even more dangerous. The hero decided that the best solution would be to return to the base and immediately went there. He reached an inconspicuous abandoned hospital, which turned out to be his refuge. He entered the building, where he came to a door that looked too good for such a building. The giant door opened. The hero was finally safe. Inside the room, there were many unusual devices, from computers to scanners. Suddenly, a robot rushed towards the hero, which was supposed to help the survivors and guard the shelter. The robot, whose name was Seven, was worried about the hero because he had been gone for half a day and said that the hero had a new task. Michael headed towards his equipment desk, the robot following behind him. The hero was very hungry, so as soon as he sat down at the computer, he immediately began to chew a delicious bun. It turned out that the main character is a kind of administrator who has many responsibilities. One of them was to attract people into this world using the internet. Such people are called players. The hero said that this was necessary to restore the territories and that he had been here for 5 months already. A guy was discussing a new realistic game with users on the internet, which, as one of the interlocutors said, was being developed by the company he had recently joined. The guy noted that with the help of such a game, the military could train their soldiers. Suddenly, he received a message with a link to this game. The guy couldn't believe his eyes because the existence of this game is impossible. At this time, Michael was using the computer in his hideout. It turned out that he was the user who suggested the guy play a new game. The hero tried to trick people into moving to this post-apocalyptic world. 11 people had already fallen for his trick, which was enough to complete the task. Previously, the hero was a simple sales manager, striving to climb the career ladder. One day, he was able to make a very profitable deal, and Michael decided to celebrate it. Then he suddenly felt ill. There was unbearable pain in his chest. The hero heard a nasty high-frequency sound, his ears began to hurt badly, and he lost consciousness. Michael woke up in this terrible world, which looked as if a nuclear war had recently occurred. At first, the guy thought he was on a film set, so he tried to find a way out. But no matter how hard he tried, there was no way out. The hero was very tired. Michael fell to his knees near the puddle and saw his reflection in it. He didn't recognize himself. It was a completely different person. The hero's ears were pierced by that disgusting sound again. His head was splitting. Instead of fainting again, a virtual board appeared in front of the hero, welcoming him to the game Wasteland Online. Out of fear, Michael decided to call the police, but he couldn't find his phone, and it turned out that all his things were missing. After this, the hero wandered around these destroyed lands for a whole day, tormented by a feeling of hunger. Luckily, he was able to stumble upon a place that looked very much like an inhabited settlement. Michael decided to ask the locals to share their food and ask about what was going on. Suddenly, the hero felt the barrel of a gun on the back of his head. He froze in fear. The gun was held by an old man named Walter. Michael was afraid to move. The main character decided to defuse the situation and said that he did not wish harm to anyone. Suddenly, a shot rang out. The bullet flew a centimeter from the hero's face. The boy looked forward and saw a bear lying lifelessly on the ground in front of him. The old man advised the hero to acquire a weapon so as not to become prey for such monsters. It was a parallel world in which a war took place that almost completely destroyed humanity. In the 211 years since those events, many animals have mutated and have become a serious threat to the survivors. But marauders were no less of a problem. They robbed and killed those who tried to survive. During the 5 months spent in this terrible place, the hero got used to it and could now stand up for himself. One of the odd things was that whenever Michael passed by the place where he appeared, He always heard that nasty sound. As the hero approached the abandoned hospital, this sound became louder. Michael moved deeper into the building, guided by the sound coming from its depths. After a few minutes of searching, the hero found himself at a large locked door. The sound coming from the room behind this door ordered the guy to open it. The hero put his palm to the unknown device. The giant gates opened, and before Michael was a refuge in which he could be safe. A robot rushed towards the hero. At first, the guy mistook it for a boss with whom he would have to fight. The little robot calmed Michael down and informed him that he was now the administrator of this shelter. The robot also said that at the moment the hero has tasks that he must complete. The guy is required to contact earthly people and call them for help. For this, he and the called players will receive experience to increase their level. The hero was glad that he would finally be able to contact people and perhaps call for help. Players who accept the invitation will be assigned a number, and Michael will have to decide who will enter the game. Selected players will be sent special equipment that will allow them to play the game. Thanks to this helmet, people will be able to control one of the clones located in the shelter. The hero was incredibly happy because now he had a chance to get out of here. Michael knew he would be here for quite a long time, so he decided to name the robot 7. The robot, overjoyed, began to circle around the guy and thank him for his care. The hero immediately received a new task. He was required to bring 4 players into this world. The guy Michael was texting was named Jacob, and he was an ordinary student. The guy couldn't believe that such a realistic game could exist. At this time, Michael tried in every way to attract forum users so that they would register for the game. Desperate to attract people, he took a chance and sent a message with a link to the game. Jacob didn't believe in the rumors about such a development, but now his confidence was shaken. The guy dreamed that he could transfer girls from other games there and enjoy virtual life. Jacob was eager to try the game and clicked on the link. The next evening, the student headed to the university cafeteria to have dinner. After a hearty chicken meal, he headed to his dorm room. When he arrived, he found an unknown box on his desk. Jacob's roommates questioned him about the package, but he insisted that he had not ordered anything. The guy decided to ask his neighbors who brought the box, but they claimed that they had not seen anyone, which greatly confused him. Jacob dared to open the package, and inside was a brand new virtual reality helmet. The guy immediately put it on his head, anticipating the upcoming game. He was already looking forward to having fun with the girls and not denying himself anything. Suddenly, a notification appeared before Jacob's eyes that he would only be able to enter the game in 3 days. The guy was hysterical. At this time, Michael was reading the correspondence of other users, where they discussed helmets that appeared out of nowhere. The hero informed them that this equipment was given to them for a while, so they should not break or lose it under any circumstances. This game uses a synchronization system, so only one person can use the helmet. It turned out that Michael had been corresponding with his old friends from Earth. After the death of his beloved grandfather, the hero cut off ties with his relatives and noted that due to his long absence, he may already be considered dead. The guy suggested to 7th to improve the game page, which would make it easier to attract players. First of all, he decided to change the main screen to interest men who would be useful in this post-apocalyptic world. He also decided to add a bot that would imitate a real girl to encourage players to stay in the game. Michael went to prepare for the game's launch and asked 7 to add the improvements he had come up with. The robot asked why the hero had sent only 4 helmets, since 11 players were needed to complete the task. The guy explained this by saying that they currently don't have enough supplies to feed such a large number of people. The hero wanted to make these 4 into those who could protect themselves in the harsh wasteland. For recruiting 4 players, Michael received a nanocarbon vest that will protect him from injury. 7 also handed the hero a box containing random rewards. The guy had a new task, the purpose of which was to make sure that at least 1 player entered the game. For this, Michael will receive a resurrection item and points, which will be enough to open the weapon box. The hero decided to spend all the points he currently had on opening secret boxes. From them, he received only a few sweets, which could not help him in any way in surviving. Michael noticed that there was an unremarkable note among the candies. He decided to read it. In the note, a certain person wrote that there is no one better than players, because they can do the work, thinking that it is just a game. The hero was furious. He wasted all his points. The guy asked if 7 knew the first owner, to which the robot replied that it was launched only when the hero first entered the shelter. The hero thought that since the first owner was the shelter administrator, there should have been records about him in the database. According to the records found, he stepped down as administrator 28 years after the end of the Great War, which erased almost all traces of human civilization. Michael decided to look into the matter in the future, but for now he put the note he found in his desk drawer. While new players are counting down 3 days, the hero decided to go for supplies. The guy headed to the survivors' camp, but on the way he met several two-headed hyenas. The hero tried to remain unnoticed by them, but unexpectedly the bloodthirsty beasts wandered towards him. These terrible monsters were mutated by strong radiation, after which their strength only decreased. Michael decided to grab a metal pipe lying nearby to be ready for the fight. The hero wanted to fight them, but there was no need to until they noticed him. Having reached the settlement, the guy decided that the first thing he needed to do was get some chips and exchange them for supplies. Michael gave some batteries and cartridges to a man named Charlie, in exchange for which he gave him 3 chips. The old man advised the main character to stock up on food and fuel, as winter was approaching. In winter, the wasteland becomes much more dangerous because mutants can lurk under layers of snow. Heavy snowfall prevents wandering traders from reaching settlements, leaving survivors with few supplies. Charlie used to live in another shelter, but he was captured by marauders and made their slave. He was put up for auction as a thing. The leader of one of the camps decided to buy the man. The hero said goodbye to old Charlie, who asked him to be careful, because he didn't want to lose a regular customer. Michael came to his house and began to think about how to use the chips he had. The hero had 70 chips, which he needed to use to buy a tool so that future players could repair the abandoned hospital building. Once the player synchronizes with the clone using the helmet, the clone will become a living being that needs to feed. The hero calculated that even if they ate only 2 times a day of wheat cakes, he would have to spend all the currency he had. Michael then decided that he would feed the players cheap green wheat. The boy decided to go to old Charlie again for provisions. On leaving the house, the hero came across a girl named Ellie, who lived in the camp with her family. The girl told Michael that she heard strange sounds in his house, so she became very worried. The hero thanked Ellie for her vigilance, and in response, she offered to watch the house when the guy was away. The main character advised the girl to be more careful with strangers, because they may not be as friendly as he is. Ellie became very angry and began to prove to Michael that she was already an adult and should not be treated like a child. To calm the little rebel, the boy gave her a lollipop, recently obtained from a secret box in the shelter. The girl, apparently having never seen such food before, could not bite off a piece of candy. The hero decided to help the girl and remove the wrapper from the lollipop. It looked very appetizing. Ellie tried the unusual delicacy and froze. It was very sweet. The girl thanked Michael with all her heart for such an unusual gift. Ellie suggested that the hero try this wonderful dessert. The guy politely declined her offer and advised her to look after the house. The hero returned to the shelter with supplies, where the 7th was already waiting for him. 3 days had already passed, so the hero was sure that the players had already synchronized with the clones. Jacob woke up in one of the flasks. He did not understand what was happening and where he was. Along with him, other players in a state of shock also emerged from the tanks. A big guy named Mark pinched himself and realized that he was indeed in the game. Another player named Tony was upset because he wanted to choose a female avatar, but the game automatically adjusted to his real gender. A bespectacled boy named Liam couldn't believe he was in a virtual world. Suddenly, the only door in the room began to open, and the players became wary. Michael came out and gave an inspiring speech about how the fate of this world was now in the hands of the newly arrived 4. The hero asked the players to call him by his nickname Dawn and introduced them to the 7th. The players started asking the guy about the various possibilities of this game. The hero explained that the 4 could exit the game by returning to their capsules. Michael led the players to a place away from the infected zone. Jacob and Liam decided that the administrator had quite a lot of power in the game, so they should be careful. The hero brought the players up to speed, telling them a brief history of the wasteland and urging them to take up its restoration. To begin with, the boys had to undergo training, and their first task was collecting firewood. Michael also tasked the players with rebuilding the destroyed hospital building. The inspired guys loudly declared that they would be happy to help the hero in this difficult task. The main character also warned the players that when meeting local monsters, it is better not to engage in battle and retreat. The hero asked the 7th to watch the 4 from the hospital window and call him in case of trouble. At this time, the guys were already in full swing chopping down the forest. The sounds of axes hitting tree trunks could be heard everywhere. Liam complained to Jacob that he was very tired from swinging the axe and did not understand why Mark was so strong. Tony suggested that each of them had characteristics that matched their characters' backstories. Jacob expressed a desire to go deep into the forest to try to meet the beautiful elves there. Mark believed that there was no one else to be found here except for the terrible mutants. Liam filled Jacob that the hero strictly forbade them to leave the hospital especially since they would hardly be able to resist the local creatures with the help of axes. The boy began to dig for wood again, but he suddenly felt uneasy and dropped his tool from his hands. Something rushed past him at great speed, and Jacob almost died. Looking at the sky, he saw a giant bird of prey there. The guy began to frantically call for help. The monster looked at Jacob lying helpless on the ground and pointed its sharp claws at him. The robot, having seen this, immediately rushed to inform the hero about what had happened. At this time, Michael was studying the matter extractor he received for attracting 4 people to the game, with the help of which it would be possible to create clones. The 7th one burst into the room and screamed hysterically that a huge bird had attacked the players. Tony and Liam helped their frightened friend up from the ground and held him to keep him from collapsing from shock. Jacob suggested that the boys quickly come up with a plan to defeat the mutated falcon. Liam stood bravely in the middle of the clearing and saw that his comrades were hiding in the forest. The guy was angry that his friends had abandoned him. Suddenly, Michael appeared out of nowhere and threw a stone at the falcon to distract it. The hero grabbed a metal pipe, which he used as a weapon, and prepared to attack the bird. The guy threw a pipe towards the flying mutant and pierced him right through. The players were amazed at how easily the administrator dealt with such a serious threat. The heroes decided that it was better to fry their prey than to leave it to rot in the forest. Michael ordered the players to be more careful from now on, because in addition to mutants, there are also other people who are a threat in the wasteland. The 4 decided that they would not be able to eat such a large carcass in one sitting, so they came up with the idea of storing the remains in the refrigerator. To this, the hero replied that a device similar to a refrigerator is only in the castle of the leader of the survivors. Lustful Jacob immediately began to fantasize about becoming the head of the camp and having a whole harem in his castle. The protagonist said that they needed as much firewood as possible, but the players looked quite tired and hungry. He decided to cheer them up and said that as a reward for cutting down trees, he would give the guys points that could be exchanged for tasty food. After these words, the 4 rushed to chop wood with all their might. After some time, the players were lying on the ground, exhausted from the grueling work. Mark the Bruiser received 2 giant pieces of bird as a reward for his efforts. Jacob and Tony each got 450 points and seemed to have become friends. Liam was upset that he had the least points. His teammates decided to cheer him up. Michael was glad that the players looked after each other. The hero also informed them that the points they received could be exchanged for various items and resurrection coins, mentioning that the resurrection process takes 3 days. The protagonist remembered that all the locals speak a language different from the earthly one, so he will have to create a translator for the players. Tony noted that there was no electricity at their outpost, so he suggested setting up a generator there. Michael promised a reward to anyone who could solve this problem, and Liam realized it was time for him to prove himself in action. The evening came and all the players returned to the shelter. They really liked this game and did not want to leave it. Only the bespectacled Liam expressed a desire to quickly leave it. At this time, Michael and Seven discussed the need to find new players to replace the current ones while they slept in the earthly world. The robot also reported that each time the system is exited, the genetic information of the clones is copied. This meant that players could upgrade their skills and become stronger, and now the hero was determined to train the 4. Liam exited the game and woke up in his room at the university. The guy was an employee of the physics department. He washed himself, got dressed, and headed to the canteen. The guy was going to ask his colleague about electric generators. This teacher was a 30-year-old man named Ethan. He was quite handsome, so the female students often looked at him. Liam sat down next to the man and began asking the professor about the generators. The guy asked if it was possible to generate electricity in an apocalypse. Ethan looked deeply into Liam's eyes and asked why he needed this if he had never been in such a world. The guy froze. He couldn't understand how the professor could know about his adventure yesterday. The professor laughed and said he was just joking, and Liam relaxed. The guy told his interlocutor a brief background of the wasteland. Ethan admitted that solving the problem with electricity would be quite difficult. After some time, the professor came up with a plan which involved using secondary car generators. Having finished explaining his idea, Ethan headed towards the exit of the cafeteria, but was attacked by the amorous female students. Liam received a message on the forum in which Tony described his impressions of the game and praised it. Tony was quite famous in gaming circles, so he decided to start a broadcast. At first, he praised the in-game world's detail and well-written characters. He also told many details about the game, and the audience asked a lot of questions. One of the commentators was very suspicious, and Tony thought that it was the guy who offered them to play the game. Michael was watching this broadcast from his hideout. The seventh reported that the number of new players increased by 11 people in just one day, which was possible thanks to Tony's popularity. The hero started a conversation with Jacob, Tony, Mark, and Liam, informing them that an update had been released in the game and that they could now customize their starting characteristics. The guys were shocked by this news and couldn't wait to get back into the game. Michael advised players to check out all the new features on the game's official website and said goodbye to them. The hero asked Seven if he could also connect to the clone, like a player using the helmet. The robot sadly reported that there was no DNA data for the protagonist in the database, so using a clone was impossible. Michael calmed Seven down and asked him to analyze his characteristics. The hero was already level 5, which put him above other players. Michael wondered why there was almost no information about him anywhere, and began to believe that his appearance in the wasteland was just a mistake. Suddenly, the hero received an achievement for the fact that one of the players was in the game for 8 whole hours. Now the guy had enough points to open the secret box. He decided to try his luck. In front of the hero lay a syringe that increased physical strength for a certain period of time. Michael was alarmed by the fact that the syringe had been lying in the wasteland for over 20 years, so he decided to proceed with caution. The seventh supported his master, and the hero injected the syringe into his arm. The guy felt absolutely no effect and decided that the drug had gone bad. Suddenly, his body went numb. His heart began to pump blood frantically through his vessels. The hero was in anticipation. He was already thinking about how strong he would become. Surprisingly, nothing happened again. Michael was very upset. The guy asked Seven to scan his body to find out if any changes had occurred. The robot fulfilled the owner's request and provided a report. It turned out that the hero surpasses the average person in all respects. The syringe still worked and gave Michael a few power points. The guy was very happy. The players were supposed to log into the game in an hour and a half, so the protagonist sent the robot to prepare for their arrival. The hero got as many as 20 new additional tasks. The guy decided to use players to complete them. Michael realized that the main task now was to fix the electricity. Without it, it would be very problematic for the players to wander around the base's outskirts. The hero realized that 4 players would not be enough, so he began looking for new ones. This required improving the advertising to interest as many people as possible. Michael was puzzled. He also thought that among the new players there would definitely be those who would cause a lot of problems. The hero came up with a new way of registration. Now people will have to indicate their phone number and home address, so he hoped to filter out unreliable players. At this time on Earth, an employee of a modeling agency was sitting at her laptop and preparing to hand in an important project. She was also a member of the group that Michael sent an invitation to play the game. The chat users, including Mark, Tony, Liam, and Jacob, were discussing Wasteland Online. The girl did not believe in the existence of such a realistic game. The worker decided to try to pass the time and calm down, so she decided to go to the game's website. The girl read a brief description of the game and did not see anything unusual in it. At the very end of the description, she read that the game would soon add the ability to do plastic surgery. The girl was delighted. The modeling agency employee immediately decided to pre-order the game to be one of the first to play it. The girl was glad that she managed to register and hoped to find inspiration in the game for creating new clothes. At this time, Michael was sitting at his computer. He was very surprised that this time the players registered much faster and in greater numbers. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and the hero prepared to meet the players. The 4 were back in the game. Mark had the strength, Tony was the trickster, and Liam had the intelligence. Jacob's stomach suddenly twisted, and he rushed to Seven to find out where the toilet was. The robot reported that there was no toilet in the shelter, and his comrades tried to hold the suffering Jacob. The guy was ready to relieve himself right in the room, but suddenly Michael entered the room and ordered the players to line up. The boys immediately lined up, Jacob struggling to contain himself. The protagonist informed the players that they needed to start rebuilding the outpost as soon as possible in order to do it before winter arrived. They also needed to obtain food, water, fuel, and build shelters. The boys were ready to get to work right away, only Jacob felt lousy. The guy couldn't stand it any longer and asked the hero for permission to go to the toilet. But Michael had completely forgotten about such cases, and there was simply no toilet. Michael asked the players to follow him. Jacob asked him to walk slowly. It seemed Tony and Mark also needed to go to the toilet. The hero led the 4 to the ruins near the shelter. It seems the guys felt sick from the falcon they ate. Mark and Jacob did relieve themselves, but had to wipe themselves with plant leaves. The players unanimously suggested that Michael take on the task of building a toilet at the base. They also suggested recycling their waste into fertilizer. Tony explained that the gases coming out of the body could be used to power a small power plant, to power a toilet. Liam, however, expressed concern that they would need sealing materials to carry out such a project. Michael was quick to reassure him, saying that there were plenty of discarded plastic bottles to be found in the wastelands. The hero urged the players to be more attentive from now on and said that yesterday he installed a task board to make it easier for the guys. The 4 players, who thought Michael was just a regular game character, were amazed that he acted like a real person. Liam raised his hand and stated that he already had ideas for the generator. The guy asked the hero if there were any old cars nearby, to which Michael replied that there was a parking lot with a bunch of cars nearby, but he had already examined them a long time ago and did not find anything useful in them. The protagonist allowed Liam to check this place, but he will have to take a partner with him to protect himself from mutants. Mark, Tony, and Jacob were scared, each of them afraid to go into the wasteland without Michael. The hero chose Jacob. The guy was worried as hell. The guy came to his senses. His excitement went away. He started teasing Mark and Tony that he would now get cool equipment and stop being a newbie like them. After some time, Liam and Jacob reached an abandoned parking lot. The place looked creepy. All the cars had long since been dismantled, so Jacob suggested that his partner return to base. The bespectacled man said that returning empty-handed would be simply a crime. Liam was trying to lift the heavy hood and ordered Jacob to help him. With some effort, the guys managed to open the hood of the car. Surprisingly, both guys knew nothing about cars and didn't even know what a generator looked like. Liam looked all over the car, but still couldn't find what he was looking for. Jacob suggested that over the past 200 years, the survivors had stolen everything, and suggested digging through the nearby trash can. The bespectacled man no longer had the strength. He really thought about going back, but his friend called him to him. Jacob showed Liam the entrance to the drain he had found in the grass. The frisky boy decided to check it out, but Liam stopped him, saying that the administrator must not know about this place, since he did not inform them, so it would be dangerous to go there. Jacob reassured his partner and reminded him that they couldn't return empty-handed. Besides, the guy had already fantasized about saving beautiful girls from there. Liam was sure that they would finally be able to find the generator in this pipe. The players decided to enter the drain. It was very creepy and damp there. Here the heroes discovered unknown glowing mushrooms and decided to take them to Michael. The boys collected all the mushrooms and a very dark, long tunnel appeared before them. Jacob rushed deeper into the darkness, believing this place to be safe, Liam trying to keep up. Suddenly, the player running ahead froze in place. He felt as if a terrible mutant was approaching him. Jacob ran as fast as he could towards the exit while Liam stood in the tunnel, confused. Suddenly, a giant slimy worm emerged from its depths, clearly hostile. Meanwhile, Mark and Tony had just finished building the toilets. The boys hadn't washed for a long time, and there was no shower. So Michael told them that they could wash in a nearby river, but mutants probably lived there. Tony suggested building a bathhouse since there would probably be female players among them, and they wouldn't really like to wash in the pond. Mark supported his friend. The players began to fantasize about beautiful girls washing each other's backs. Michael was amazed by their behavior. They resembled pubescent teenagers. Suddenly, Jacob appeared on the horizon, running at full speed. The guy stopped right next to the dug hole. Liam, who was hurrying after his friend, did not notice it and crashed into his standing partner. 2 players fell over a small fence and into a hole. Michael picked up the mushrooms that had fallen out of the bag from the ground and thanked the guys for the work they had done. The hero cooked soup and fed it to the players. They ate it greedily. The main character asked where Jacob and Liam found these blue mushrooms. The guys told a story that happened in the parking lot. Michael told the players that these mushrooms are called blue angels, and if you eat them, you will end up with real angels, meaning you will die. The hero explained that these mushrooms contain an unusual substance that is highly valued by local traders because it can be used to make drugs that help with radiation. The guy also said that harvesting these plants is incredibly dangerous because they grow near the nests of mutated leeches. Adults reach between 1 and 3 meters in length and can eat a person in one bite. Liam and Jacob were terrified that they were literally one step away from a painful death. Michael asked the bespectacled man to show on the map where this cave was located. The administrator gave the 2 guys 220 points as a reward for their work. The hero thought about the leech's lair. He could not imagine that it was located so close to the shelter. The main character decided to go to the survivors' camp to exchange mushrooms for currency, for which he can get at least 40 chips, which is quite a large sum. The administrator ordered the players to continue working on the area around the base and said that 7 would open the elevator to the shelter in the evening. After a while, the 4 stood at the board with tasks. Tony did not understand why Michael gave the guys only 20 points for finding mushrooms, because they are quite valuable. Tony realized that the whole point was that the priority now was to complete tasks for survival, and not to explore the territories. The guy also suggested that players could create new tasks themselves, because picking mushrooms and building toilets were not on the list of tasks. Liam expressed the opinion that by completing the tasks set by the game itself, players will receive a lot more points. Tony encouraged his comrades to complete as many tasks as possible to improve their abilities. The guy also noticed that Michael was behaving not like a game character, but like a real player. Other players supported his idea and were shocked that the administrator was deceiving them. Tony said that this was just a guess, so there was no reason to panic. Players decided to unite to gain an advantage over other users. Tony suggested that Liam and Jacob explore the shore of a nearby lake and asked them to mark on the map places similar to mutant nests. Jacob didn't like that the guy thought he was the leader of the team. Mark and Tony continued to chop down trees. The big guy suggested that after the game they look up the use of wood on the internet. Meanwhile, a man appeared at the entrance to the survivors' camp, leading a large herd of cows carrying many boxes. Next to him, on a chain, he led a girl who was dressed in torn clothes. The guys who saw the girl admired her body and felt sorry that such a beauty would have to be fed to pigs. The man brought the slave to Old Man Charlie and ordered her to be handed over to the head of the camp. It turned out that the girl was a commodity that the leader had ordered. Michael saw workers unloading what the man had brought. His name was Howard. Charlie told the hero stories about how people grown in test tubes were being sold in the city. Only the powerful head of the settlement could afford such luxury. Howard rewarded the workers with a few chips for unloading the caravan. The man headed towards the gate, but Michael was already waiting for him at the exit. He called out to Howard. The stern man asked who he was and what he wanted from him. The hero stated that he did not wish anyone harm and simply wanted to sell the goods. Howard joked that there was a new scavenger in camp, and his assistant laughed. The man said that he didn't care at all about the hero's merchandise, and that he could sell this trash to Charlie, but not to him. Michael decided to surprise Howard and showed him 2 kilograms of blue angels. The man's face changed when he saw them and asked how much the hero wanted for them. The guy demanded a whole 200 chips for the goods. Howard immediately agreed and grinned. Apparently, these mushrooms were worth much more. The hero was going to exchange these chips for equipment with Charlie, but the man offered to buy the goods from him so as not to involve the old man in this deal. Michael asked if there was a firearm available, to which a stern Howard handed him an excellent gun. The man set a price of 230 chips for the rifle and ammunition. The hero decided to buy a weapon and 60 rounds of ammunition, and with the remaining 25 chips, he wanted to buy food and other supplies. Michael made Howard an offer. The man should support the guy and give him a discount. In exchange, he will bring him more mushrooms. After some thought, the man agreed and extended his hand to the guy. The men shook hands, and Howard hoped that they could continue to cooperate in the future. Michael wrapped his newly acquired rifle in a piece of cloth. The slave trader gave the boy some currency and noted that not everyone was worthy of such an honor. Howard advised the hero to be careful when collecting mushrooms because leeches are very dangerous. Michael knew that firearms were ineffective against them. He was afraid that leeches might be more resilient than he thought. Also, even if they are vulnerable to fire, he won't be able to use it because all the mushrooms will burn along with them. Howard put his hand on the hero's shoulder and said that he would come to the camp at the end of the month and hinted that the guy would need to get 20 kilograms of goods. For such a large batch, he would pay the guy 2,000 chips. The man suggested that he order the necessary supplies in advance. The assistant handed Michael a tablet, and he decided to buy night vision goggles and a strong bulletproof vest. Suddenly, the hero saw what they simply needed. There was a generator available, but it cost a whole 1,200 chips. Michael eventually decided to buy a generator and an exoskeleton for 2,000 chips, and Howard called his choice quite good. The man asked why the scavenger needed a whole generator if he could buy batteries, which cost much less. The hero decided to ask whether his individual discount on the goods would apply, to which the man replied that the price of the goods was already discounted. Enraged by the merchant's impudence, Michael showed his middle finger to Howard as he walked away. It was getting dark, so the guy decided to wait out the night in the settlement. Walking past Charlie's outlet, the hero saw that it was surrounded by a large number of people. A man approached the crowd with a sign in his hand. He announced that by the end of the month, each house must give 100 kilograms of wood and 2 square meters of fur. according to the decree of the head. The residents began to whisper, discussing how to cope with another collection. Michael decided that the leader planned to make a fortune before the last caravan arrived. Michael went home. He had no need to hand over supplies because he would leave the city before the caravan arrived. On the way home, the protagonist came across Ellie arguing with a boy named Ron. The boy reproached the girl for guarding the house of a dead man. Ellie screamed that the owner of the house was alive. Ron decided that he was dead because Michael had not appeared at home for almost a week. The guy believed that the girl's family wanted to take the house for themselves, so he suggested dividing the share in half. Ellie refused his offer, and Ron was so angry that he wanted to hit the defenseless little girl. The boy swung his fist at the girl, but Michael stopped him at the last moment. The little one told the hero that Ron planned to destroy his house. The scavenger declared that from now on, Ellie was under his protection. The boy was scared to death. Michael grinned and offered to help the boy get out of there. The hero decided to scare the boy even more, so he pretended to reach for his metal pipe. Ron ran in fear towards his house so fast that all that was left behind was a dusty trail. The girl thanked Michael for driving away the bully. The guy decided to give her a lollipop as a thank you for looking after the house. Ellie began to greedily suck on the candy when suddenly the men called out to her. It was her father, brother Alex, and brother Steve. They returned to camp with large bags on their shoulders. The girl immediately ran home. Michael decided that she was not allowed to communicate with him. The men began to enter the house, but Alex stopped and looked at the hero. The brother said that he thought the main character was dead. The scavenger joked that the guy's intuition was failing him. Alex also said that due to the new decree of the head, his family will have to go for supplies. The guy invited Michael to go hunting together, but the hero politely refused. The main character noted to himself that the place where Alex's family would hunt deer was located near the hero's base. He hoped not to cross paths with them. The brother admitted that Ron's family has the nerve to bully Michael because he is alone. The guy proposed to the hero to marry Ellie, and with these words put his hand on his shoulder. The scavenger stood in a stupor. This was an unexpected proposal. He ran away, shouting that this was not necessary. The guy ran behind the nearest concrete fence and only now realized what had happened. Michael had already begun to imagine Ellie offering him delicious pancakes in the morning and inviting him to splash around in the bath. The hero blushed. At this time, Mark and Tony were thinking about what to do with the cut-down trees so that they would not spoil. The big guy suggested drying the wood over a fire to make it stronger. He also suggested painting both ends of the logs and letting them dry. The guy suggested that if they made beams out of the logs, they could restore half of the hospital's outer walls. But if they do not process the resulting blanks, they will rot after the first rain. Tony suggested using cement as a building material. Mark noted that they could only use concrete blocks mixed with cement, and there was nothing else nearby. Suddenly, Jacob's voice was heard behind the boys. They were carrying 2 buckets in their hands. The player reported that they had explored the entire area around the nearest lake. Jacob pulled out a map from his bag, on which mutant nests were marked with crosses, and a circle indicated a place where it was safe to collect water. Tony asked what kind of liquid the guys brought in their buckets. Jacob revealed that he had planned to find a beautiful girl swimming in the lake, but instead, he came across a pile of dirt. Liam hoped to use the dirt he found as building material. Mark said that this was not an option as it would wash off easily, but at least now they had material for the stove. Tony explained to his comrades that they were discussing ways to create cement. The brute suggested trying to create a stove. He was very determined. Mark ordered Jacob and Liam to collect more dirt because the current amount was not enough. Tony and the strongman continued to cut down trees. Everyone was ready to start work. The players raised their fists, symbolizing their desire to surprise the administrator. Sometime later, Jacob and Liam were trying to escape from a bloodthirsty bear in the forest. Suddenly, Liam tripped over a rock and fell to the ground, knocking his glasses off. The mutant quickly approached the defenseless boy and pointed his teeth and claws at him. Suddenly, Michael woke up. It turned out it was just a nightmare. The guy sat for a few more minutes, thinking about everything he had seen, holding the rifle tightly in his hands. The hero regretted that almost all of his supplies, accumulated over 5 months, were almost exhausted. The scavenger wondered what the players were doing now. He was worried about them despite the presence of the 7th. He was distracted by a knock on the door and heard the voice of little Ellie. The hero opened the door and asked the girl what she was doing here so early in the morning. The girl handed the boy a package containing a poorly baked cookie. Michael took the treat and ate it willingly. Ellie looked at him with a strange look. The girl whispered in his ear that her brother Alex had asked her to bake and bring cookies, and the hero was embarrassed by this news. The administrator did not expect the guy to be so stubborn and cunning. The hero asked why the girl had blabbed this secret, to which she replied that she did not want to lie to her friend and protect her. Suddenly, Ellie hid behind the main character because she saw Ron, who was accompanied by his older brother. Michael told the girl to hide in his house, but the naughty boy began to threaten her. Then Ron's brother grabbed him by the shoulder and told the boy to shut up. The hero and his brother, named Jack, passed each other, Jack looking very menacing. The scavenger admitted that this guy is quite difficult and creepy. The hero told Ellie that the danger had passed and said goodbye to her. The girl asked the boy to be careful and said that she would wait for his return. Michael thanked Ellie and thought that he could have built a relationship with her if she had been older. The hero visited old Charlie and asked him to exchange for a few kilograms of green wheat. The guy also needed tobacco leaves to make dried meat. Now the hero had a rifle, which meant it would be easier to hunt, and therefore there would be more meat to eat. Charlie handed the scavenger a bag of wheat and asked him why he needed it, since he had recently bought it. The hero began to fear that the leader would decide that he wanted to create a gang and would most likely want to kill him. The boy put the bag on his shoulder and was about to head to the base, but old Charlie noticed that to carry such a load he would need a riding animal. Michael decided that this was no use, said goodbye to the merchant, and quickly set off on his way. After some time, the administrator returned to the destroyed hospital and saw an unusual sight before him. During his absence, the players had assembled a whole oven, and the guy was stunned. The scavenger asked how the guys were doing and if they had encountered any mutants. Tony explained that they had not met anyone and had created kilns to produce cement. The player explained that they can burn cut trees and turn them into ash. They then need to add water and filter the resulting mixture, which will result in a paste. After this, it is necessary to place sand, coal, and water in the oven. From them and this paste, they will get the necessary cement. Michael remembered that he also tried to create cement, but all his work immediately fell apart. Tony said that they now want to completely restore the hospital building. The administrator thanked the guy for his resourcefulness, and Michael thought about how to reward him. Tony's eyes lit up and he proudly declared that he was happy to be involved in the revival of human civilization. The other players were unhappy that the guy was taking all the credit for himself, and Jacob even started to choke him. As a reward for their efforts, Michael promised the players to find them an assistant. The guys tried to persuade the administrator to invite a beautiful girl to the team. The hero said that he would take their wishes into account, but in return they must continue to work. The 4 players saluted Michael and promised to try even harder. Mark ran to cut down trees, ordering the others to work on the stove. The guys began to argue. The hero went to his office and put the heavy bag on the floor. Michael received a reward for completing the tasks of harvesting wood and creating coal. The hero decided to spend points on supply boxes and received from there some candies, a chocolate bar, and refined salt, which was quite valuable. The scavenger decided that he could exchange the received packet of salt for 30 regular ones. The guy decided to put this idea on hold for now and focused on building the base. The hero noticed that the new participants were absolutely nothing and would not be able to help him implement his plan. Suddenly, a user appeared in the group who was very knowledgeable in chemistry and could create many chemical substances from wood. Michael went to his personal page and found out that he was most likely a carpenter. The hero was very happy because together they would be able to use wood for different purposes. The guy from the workshop received a message inviting him to participate in the game. A young man named Robert asked who it was. Michael replied that he was the developer of Wasteland Online and sent a registration link to confirm this. Robert was determined that he had to try this game. The hero said that he would register the guy in the system and notify him when he could enter the game. Michael reflected that now that there would be a carpenter on the base, it was necessary to attract as many such professionals as possible. The administrator decided that there were now enough supplies at the base to support 2 more players, especially since he could start hunting as well. The hero realized who they were missing from the team and went in search of a cook. Finally, after a few minutes of searching, he came across a guy who was a professional in his field. After some time, Michael went to the 3rd floor of the hospital and met a worried 7th there. The hero asked him what happened. The robot replied that his charge was almost 0. At first, the guy relaxed because he thought something bad had happened. Only a moment later did he realize the full horror of the situation. He had nothing to charge the 7th with. The robot quickly reassured its owner and informed him that it was charging wirelessly, so all he needed to do was return to the shelter. Michael picked up his beloved assistant and headed to the base. On the way, 7 decided to tell the hero that this building is powered by an entire thermonuclear reactor. The guy broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't even suspect that such a dangerous device had been next to him the whole time. When Michael calmed down, The robot explained that the reactor was now in a deplorable state because 2,340 years had passed since its construction. The scavenger was afraid that the reactor was now in danger of breaking down and asked what would happen if the electricity ran out. The seventh scratched his metal head and regretfully reported that he did not know this. The robot explained that the device was located on the third level under the hospital, and if the hero got access to it, he would be able to replace the fuel rods and prevent a catastrophe. Michael reached the charging point and connected Seven, who thanked him. The hero decided that there shouldn't be any problems with the reactor anytime soon. According to his assumption, there should be enough energy for several more decades. What he was most worried about was the approaching winter. Time was running out. Michael went to the players to find out how the work was going, but suddenly found himself in a stupor. There were 8 ovens in front of the hero's eyes. Apparently, the guys weren't wasting their time. Mark ran up to the administrator, who told the big guy that he had been to the lower floors of the hospital. The hero praised the player for the work he had done and promised that his contribution to the common cause would never be forgotten. In addition, he gave all players 1,000 points for discovering cement. The protagonist appointed Mark as the head of the shelter's construction crew. From now on, he could create and design whatever he wanted, but without going beyond the limits. Mark bowed respectfully. It was an honor for him to receive this position. Standing to the side, Jacob was unhappy that Michael was paying too much attention to the strong man. The hero asked Mark to tell him more about his idea. The guy said that yesterday, after leaving the game, he went to a cement factory where one of the workers advised him to add iron powder to the cement to make it stronger. Mark reported that he used coal and rusty metal to produce iron. The player planned to use the new strong concrete to create objects aimed at increasing cement production. Now they needed a new kiln that would use limestone and clay instead of wood ash. Michael praised his well-thought-out plan and asked him to start working on it as soon as possible. The hero gathered the players and announced that 2 more people would join them in a few days. On this occasion, the administrator decided to organize a small banquet to greet them with dignity. The guys were delighted with this news. But in order to feed them, it was necessary to get game in the forest. The hero invited one of the players to go with him. Absolutely all the guys volunteered to help Michael, but he didn't want to leave the base unattended. Of the 4, the hero chose Jacob. The guy was incredibly happy. To begin with, the main character asked the guy to take him to the mutant's lair near the parking lot. After a while, the guys reached the parking lot and Jacob pointed to a giant tunnel in the grass. Michael ordered the guy to move on and not go into that place. The hero headed in the other direction from the parking lot. Jacob was puzzled because they were going to hunt, but they were moving further and further away from the forest. The scavenger very calmly explained that there was another forest here. The boys reached the destroyed highway. The once majestic city looked terrible. The giant roots that had grown around the abandoned houses scared the hell out of Jacob. The main character picked up a rifle and ordered his partner to be extremely careful. The administrator explained that this place has now become a paradise for various mushrooms and plants. Over time, wild animals came to the destroyed cities. Due to the strong exposure to radiation over a long period of time, they all turned into bloodthirsty mutants. The hero advised Jacob to stay as close as possible, but the guy was thinking about meeting new types of mutants in this game. Suddenly a voice was heard in the air, and Michael felt uneasy. The hero gestured to his comrade to stop, but he was confused. The scavenger explained that he had noticed traces of other survivors there. Jacob dreamed of meeting new characters. He could not even imagine what awaited him ahead. Michael reproached the player for impatience and stated that there was nothing to be happy about. The hero explained that in the wastelands, people can be much more dangerous than stupid hyenas. Nearby, the guys found gunpowder residue and pieces of torn tin cans. These were components of a tripwire that was triggered, which were installed only where there were predators and mutants. The heroes had to be more careful. Michael could tell by the smell that the trap had been triggered about 5 hours ago. The hero went to scout the area and ordered Jacob to wait for him here. The guy suggested going together, to which the hero responded with a firm refusal. After moving a short distance, Michael admitted that he had wanted to use Jacob as bait, but now plans had changed. The potential enemy could be either cruel marauders or mutants. The bait could only scare them away. The hero was afraid that the enemy would notice the smoke coming from their shelter. The guy was determined to destroy anyone who decided to threaten them. Michael destroyed about 20 mutated rats. He was afraid that it would be very difficult to deal with a large crowd of these monsters. Having climbed onto the roof of the building, the hero saw a small camp consisting of several tents. The survivors in the wasteland were divided into those who settled in destroyed houses and those who lived in ruins or in open spaces. Usually, mutants build settlements anew. These monsters reach more than 2 meters in height and weigh more than 300 kilograms. They feed on various mushrooms, plants, mutated mice, but their main delicacy is human flesh. Michael noticed a sentry on the roof of a nearby building. It was a mutant armed with a bow. It was hard for the hero to think about what would have happened if he had not gone to inspect the area. Suddenly, the hero had a mission, the goal of which was to kill all mutants. Michael thought the game was trying to kill him because attacking the mutants would result in his painful death. The hero believed that tasks could only be received in the shelter, so he was slightly shocked. The scavenger decided to collect the reward and so quickly returned to Jacob. The guy asked what the administrator was doing in that building. Michael told him everything, and the player, having heard about the mutant's lair, was terribly scared. Jacob thought that they would have to attack them now, but the hero calmed him down and said that there was no need for that. Besides, they only had one gun, which meant that only one of them could fight. The player grabbed his head in fear. Previously, he thought that the mutants in the game did not pose a particular danger. Michael told him that all they needed to do now was drive them away, then get rid of them forever. The boys went to their shelter. They passed through an abandoned construction site. Suddenly, the main character noticed a pile of limestone on the ground. He had already calculated that if they used it in cement production, they would be able to build entire buildings. Returning to base, the boys saw that there were dead hyenas lying next to Mark, Tony, and Liam. Michael told the players that he had both good and bad news. The good news was that there were limestone deposits near the shelter. Mark was glad that the cement problem was finally solved. The bad news was that there was a camp next to the park where there were about 20 mutants. Jacob explained to his comrades that they were very cruel and loved to feast on people. Michael stated that these monsters were too strong for them. From that moment on, players were forbidden to approach the street where they were located. The four saluted the administrator. Now the hero had to deal with the hyena carcasses. During the entire time he spent here, the scavenger only bought ready-made meat and never hunted himself. The only thing he knew was that the prey had to be bled dry so that it wouldn't start to rot. Suddenly, Liam approached the hero and asked him to give him some hyena blood. The bespectacled man said that he had some guesses and he needed the blood of predators to check them. Michael cold-bloodedly cut off the dead animal's paw and handed it to the player. He thanked the administrator, but his soul was twisted from looking at the dead body. In the evening, Mark reported to his mentor that the cement kiln was almost ready. The hero thanked the player again and wished him luck in developing his idea. The guy noticed to himself that he was flattering better each time. From Michael's observations, the players were feeling very happy. The hero was very pleased to watch how life was going in the shelter. But unfortunately, the scavenger was currently short on supplies, so he had nothing to reward the diligent players with. The main character sat down on a chair and decided to look into the chat. One of the participants decided to write a whole article about how he tried to play Wasteland online. After reading this article, the hero decided that he should pay more attention to such users during the next recruitment of players. Michael decided to take a rest after a hard day at work. The guy got some points for the completed tasks and decided to open the secret box again. Stupid lollipops fell out of the box. The hero noticed that among them was a candy in a gold wrapper. It turned out that this was a unique item that briefly increased strength. The guy cried with happiness. The guy decided that this item would be useful to him in a critical situation. Michael put the lollipop in his jacket pocket to use when the time came. In the morning, Mark and Liam returned to camp. They brought limestone. The big guy suggested starting to create cement, at which time the bespectacled man fell to the ground without strength. Mark began to crush the stones with a large sledgehammer. Other players added iron filings and clay to the resulting powder. Now they needed to heat the oven to 1450 degrees. Tony decided to help the guys and blow air to raise the temperature. He asked Mark how to raise it, to which he replied that he did not know. Tony began to protest, but the big guy quickly put him in his place. The quarreling players noticed that Jacob and Liam had disappeared. At this time, they hurried to Michael and finally found him. The administrator asked where they had been, but a nervous Liam replied that they had been walking near the mutant camp. The main character was very angry because the players disobeyed his order. Jacob said they just set traps and didn't go close, and they brought back leech larvae. The scavenger was curious as to how they managed to catch them. Jacob explained that they used hyena blood to lure them into the bottles. The hero noted that this was a pretty good idea. The main character asked how they could use them. Liam assured them that they would make excellent fishing bait. The bespectacled man reported that he had recently seen birds catching fish in a nearby lake. Michael remembered how he tried to fish, but nothing worked. The hero noticed that if fish were easy to catch, people would settle near bodies of water, which means that all sea creatures would also become mutants. The manager asked Liam if he knew how to fish. He said no, but he was planning to set out some fish traps. The main character called on the bespectacled man to take care of this issue. The guys ran off to do some business while the hero decided to eat hyena meat. Yesterday, the guy already tried to cook it. He rolled the meat in tobacco leaves and fried it. But unfortunately, it turned out smelly and almost inedible. The hero couldn't understand what he was doing wrong. Michael threw away the piece of burnt meat. It was too horrible. The scavenger needed a refrigerator, and for it, he needed a generator, which could be obtained from Howard in exchange for mushrooms. The hero needed to start stocking up for the winter as early as possible. For the next 3 days, Michael went hunting in the morning. After the hunt, he cooked the meat he got and fed it to the players. Then he sat by the fire and thought about what to do with the meat. As a reward for hunting, the hero received 7 points, which was enough to open the box. From it, he got a whole bottle of soy sauce. The hero could already imagine the players' happy faces when they tried meat with this additive. At this time, Jacob, surrounded by the other players, sat by the fire, tired of eating stewed meat. He felt unwell, and this food gave him diarrhea. Tony felt sick and admitted that he would rather eat wheat. Mark encouraged the boys that they would have delicious food in the future. The players were very angry. Jacob was ready to spend all his money on buying spices. Liam was thinking about improving the fish trap and was asked to shut up. Jacob asked Mark how things were going with the cement, and he replied that everything would be ready soon. The big guy explained that they are currently trying to create bricks, but without a special form, it is not working out very well. Tony complained that this game was too difficult. Liam admitted he was right. He hadn't caught anything for several days despite all his efforts. The bespectacled man was already starting to run out of leeches. The guy decided to restore the fish population in the lake. Mark remembered that the hero had spoken about new players joining them. Jacob began to imagine that there would be an unreal beauty among them. Suddenly, Michael came out to the players and introduced his new comrades. One of them was a rather plump man. He was a cook. The other one was a professional carpenter. Tony, Mark, and Jacob were horrified that it was 2 men. Michael imagined them as scrambled eggs with a tomato and a mosquito in the toilet. The hero thought that these names were terribly stupid, but he didn't show it. The guys greeted the new players who headed towards the cauldron. The cook and carpenter couldn't believe they could smell in the game. The guys admired the realism. Mark asked about their abilities. Carpenter Robert said that he was very dexterous. Jacob clarified that they were originally supposed to prepare a welcoming ceremony, but things didn't go according to plan. The guy offered the new players something to eat and handed the bowl of food to Robert. The mosquito in the toilet tried something liquid and was stunned with disgust. The taste was terrible. Tony warned that if the players did not eat, they would become seriously ill. A chubby cook named Steve didn't even try the gruel. Mark announced that there was meat on the plate, and the new players couldn't believe their ears. The big guy said that the dish was made from hyena meat. Steve tried his portion and was horrified by the rotten taste. Mark advised the chef to contact the manager if he was a good cook. Robert asked if the team needed a professional carpenter. The strong man said he needed help making brick molds, and the guy was delighted. Tony and Mark dragged Robert away at breakneck speed. Liam informed Steve that the game could be very difficult at times, and the chef decided to look around. Mark and Tony admired the carpenter's work. The timber he cut looked like works of art. The big man thanked Robert with all his heart. Mark and Tony set about building a stove using bricks. The strong foreman was confident that they would succeed. Mark suggested that his friend take a walk while the oven was being fired. By this time, Robert had already managed to create a new fish trap. He changed the overall design and added metal elements for strength. Jacob suggested that the carpenter and Liam go fishing together and test it out. Michael returned to trying to cook hyena meat. Suddenly, a fat man named Steve approached him. The hero appointed him as the head chef without hesitation. The guy was a little shocked. The administrator said that they needed to prepare a lot of food for the hundreds of people who would arrive here closer to winter. Now the hero obliged Steve to help him. The chef didn't expect that he would have to cook in the game as well. Finding himself in a desperate situation, Steve asked how he could help. The main character said that now he must solve the problem with storing food. But now Michael just wanted to know why his meat tasted bad. Steve advised the hero to cook it indoors. He also said that tobacco leaves are not at all suitable as a seasoning. The chef said that you can cook meat without salt. Steve suggested trying canning food. The scavenger instructed the player to take care of this and left, and the problem was solved. Now that almost all the problems have been solved, the hero decided to call even more players. Suddenly, Mark and Tony flew out to meet him, looking extremely pleased. They showed him a pile of fresh cement. They finally succeeded. The big guy said that they would now be producing up to half a ton per day. The boys were very tired, as they had put in a lot of effort to heat the oven to the required temperature. The main character called the creation of cement a giant step in their development. For the work done, the administrator awarded them 1,000 points. The players were incredibly happy. Michael believed that if his subordinates had a lot of currency, it would lead to inflation. The scavenger decided to create lottery machines with random rewards that would be purchased using player points rather than chips. Tony said that now they would be able to build an entire outpost, but they needed workers. The guys needed 4 people to work the ovens. Another 4 will transport building materials. And finally, 8 more people will be involved in construction. The main character believed that he would not be able to feed such a large crowd. But winter was approaching, so Michael decided to call in another group of newcomers. Tony and Mark were already beginning to imagine themselves commanding an entire brigade. Tony admired the administrator's authority. He mistook Michael for an innovative artificial intelligence. At this time, Robert finished working on his creation. He made a real toilet. It was really needed. Suddenly, Liam came running out of nowhere. He couldn't contain his natural impulse. Steve offered him to use the new toilet, but the guy refused. The bespectacled man called it too unhygienic and ran into the bushes. Suddenly, a familiar voice called Steve. The cook turned around. It was Jacob, holding a giant fish. The guy threw the mutant at the fat man's feet. He was shocked by its size. Jacob scolded Liam for almost shitting his pants and running away. Steve called the catfish not such a great catch, and the hot-tempered fisherman was furious. He said that they had to sit by the lake for 3 whole days. The trapped prey simply broke it. Suddenly, birds flew in, wanting to feast on the big fish. When the birds disappeared, the guys tried to get the catfish, but it was too strong. Then they had to take metal pipes in their hands and kill the mutant. Jacob asked if Steve could cook such a catch. In his entire career as a chef, the guy had never seen such a monster. Smoking such fish would be very difficult, but the player decided to try. After some time, Steve made soup from the catfish head. The guy poured it into plates and distributed it to his comrades. Jacob admitted that it smelled very appetizing. The players were delighted. They had never eaten such delicious food. Evening came and the 6 were out of the game. Michael decided to start recruiting new players. He posted news that the game could now have up to 30 players. There were already more than 100 applications to join the team. The hero was surprised by such activity. The hero discovered that one of the forum users was provoking others, causing them to withdraw their applications. Michael was furious. The main character decided to hire a couple of moderators to control the behavior of users. Suddenly, the scavenger received a message from Tony. In it, the guy asked if the administrator was a real person. The hero hinted to his interlocutor that he is different from other game characters. Michael made fun of Tony and called him the new artificial intelligence.